So hi, everybody. Welcome. Steve Cady here with a whole bunch of great people, friends, all of us who care about OD&C and our world and its role in our world. And we are having a discussion today about a really important question around shifting the focus of the initiative on the role of doctoral education in advancing the field of OD&C to a larger question around should we focus and shift to focus on what is the strategy for the future of the field, and then how might that inform this initiative? And that's the general question, because there have been a lot of questions that came up at the PDW around having that larger question addressed. And we've had some smaller conversations and debriefs after that, and came to a conclusion that we need to bring you all together and have that conversation today. And we're doing it in a collaborative dialogue way, and we'll try our best to come to a reasonable consensus, something that we can all support. Maybe not we all agree 100% behind, but something that we can support. I would like that. Hi, Ted. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you. Welcome, and thanks for being here. I was just doing a little introduction, context setting for the reason for today around looking at this question around the future of the field and shifting this initiative to focusing on that, and then we'll worry about how to move forward. So with that, I'd like to begin with a little context setting with David and Tanya starting, and Patrice, and then maybe others, if you all are willing, anybody can talk a little bit about context setting. We're not going to answer the question as much as what are some historical things to consider? What are some other things? What are your reactions and reflections? Any points you want to make that might be about context setting? And then what we'll do is we'll break into small groups and address the first question. Second, we'll come back and see if we can make some progress. So that's our agenda for today. And again, I'm really grateful for you all being here. This is an important and exciting conversation to have. So David, if I could throw the potato in your lap first, and then you could throw it over to Tanya, and then Patrice, and then anybody else that wants to jump in after that.
Sure. Hopefully it's not a hot potato.
It's a hot potato. That's a little bit of a hot potato. It'll keep you warm. We're getting into fall on this hemisphere.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I feel like I'm kind of a late joiner to this effort, this initiative. Steve really has been at the forefront of driving this discussion on the future or how to move forward with doctoral education and organization development and change. I'm very grateful for his energy for this, and have certainly been a supporter of everything that he's trying to do. And he and I have had many conversations over now several years about where we are as a field and how to move things. I think for me, the biggest question is I think about how to ground any education in OD&C at the doctoral level, or master's or otherwise. I find myself repeatedly coming back to what end? Like what is the end that we're trying to achieve through these efforts? And for me, that the answer is, well, I think we're trying to build a profession. I think we're trying to really reinforce or even define what it means to practice as a professional of OD and change. And I'm fully aware that there have been efforts over the 60 or 70-year history of this field to do exactly that, but somehow it seems like we've struggled to like get the foundations in place in a way that's defensible. Now, that said, if we go down that path of like, okay, in order for us to find what is we're trying to do with the ends of education, we need to like have a sort of a bigger picture in mind. I don't want to repeat the efforts of the past. I want to the extent that we move forward, we need to do things that help us to really make progress. And from my perspective, it's not going to help to spend more time trying to define what OD is or change management or whatever. I think we just need to get into the nitty gritty. What people who engage in a rigorous way in these practices, what they actually do. What is it that we actually look for when we're doing what we do? And what is it that we cue to? How do we make adjustments? Like, what are the theoretical perspectives that we're drawing on? So I'm just all about like being super, super practical, not in terms of abstract definitions, but in terms of the work that is actually done when it's done well. And so that's where I am on this. And I think it's my it might be my fault for being a thorn in Steve's side, where I'm just keep raising those questions over and over again. But I just feel like if we're going to do something that's really significant, we need to get serious about really laying the foundations of a field of practice and all that entails. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Tanya, could you share some of your thoughts?
Yeah.
And a little bit of our work together, because you've been a part of the work and at the PDW and so forth. Could you share a little bit of your perspective?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I'm excited to be here on this call, but also as a participant in the past and somehow experienced the whole journey, so to say, from the last year to this year's PDW and this discussions afterwards. And I'm really excited to move forward with all of you. I have to say I'm a bit tired today. I'm sorry for that. I had teaching all day in German, so it's quite hard for me now to switch to English. But I can also resonate with what David said, that my goal is to inspire the next generation of professionals, and I can see that they are quite inspired and really want to make a difference in organizations. I can really see that, and how to develop healthy and sustainable organizations in this world that is more and more dynamic. And I also see that we need more orientation and guidance, and empower them with knowledge and tools, methods, so that they really can make the impact they are longing for. So I'm really excited to share our experience and knowledge and maybe best practice and see what's in it for all of us and the generations to come.
Thanks.
Thank you for.
Yeah, Patrice, how about you?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I've been a kind of part of this from the beginning, from when Steve had the idea, and I've had to kind of dip in and dip out because of the AoM role with the OD&C division that I've had last year, which seemed a rich and a very long year. So I have been able to influence. It was my idea, maybe, to do the PDW. I'm all for it and always have been for a few reasons. And one of those is connected to the OD&C division. I want this division to be the best division there is for doctoral students. I think a lot of good can be had if we have that focus. So I've been behind this for a long time, but not really able to stay with it in a sustained way, in a way that I hope to now in the future. The kind of key reason, or the key possibility that I see for what we're doing here, is because of my commitment to scholar practitionership as an ideal in the world. I'm a faculty member, was a program director, now a faculty member in Fielding Graduate University, and we are all about scholar practitionership. And I have such a strong belief in the possibilities of that for individuals, for groups, for the profession, as David David describes, and for organizations and communities, as Tanya describes. And for me, for that to be meaningful, we need to understand practice better, and practice needs to become more effective. And for it to be meaningful, to me, scholarship means people who can create knowledge and can critically assess knowledge. And for me, that means doctoral education. So I think there's a lot of possibilities here, and my own commitment to it is a commitment to scholar practitionership. Along with what I think the OD&C division can be and do for doctoral students, with benefit on both sides and for all parties. I do agree with David, and we've had similar conversations about kind of what we should do next in terms of the OD&C division. I was at the PDW, I had to leave early, but I do see absolutely the need for us to be able to articulate clearly. Both practitioners and scholars need this, to be able to articulate clearly what it is we're talking about when we talk about organization development and change. And I want us to do that, but I don't want us to get hung up on that. And I don't want that to become the be all and end all of this group. That needs to happen. And I think it's going to be happening in different spaces in the OD&C division. And this should be a space for that conversation. But I would really not like to see us pivot to that as an aim. That becomes too scholarly in the sense that we spend an awful lot of time talking about conception of something. People never completely agree on that, and you never really do anything as a result of it. So I'd love to see us get that clear, and then to move on with practically what we want to do for this space and for this initiative to make a difference.
Other thoughts? Maybe questions of clarification. We'll break into small groups and discuss that first question that you see. I'll put it back in the chat here for those that came in a little later.
One thought, Steve, and I was also at PDW, and hey, great to see some of you again who were there, and also other folks who I know and were not there. But I do think that it was interesting. There were a few people from different divisions, I think, who came in and went like, okay, what is OD&C and what is this? And so I think that may have generated some discussion about how are we clear about what the field is. So I think that sprung up, although the people who came and asked that were kind of intrigued and were glad to be there and thought we were a fun group. But nonetheless, there were some, I think that's where some of the questions came from. The other thing, though, that did happen, for those of you who weren't there, is there were breakout groups kind of in terms of what's your interest. And so one of these ideas that came to the forefront, I think, Dave, I remember you were at the table, I think, Danielle, you were at the table, about a summer academy. Like, how do we up the scholarship and the scholar practitioner idea and do some kind of NTL-ish, but you can talk about that. And then I think there was another initiative that said, there was someone, gosh, I can't remember the university, Fordham maybe, on how do you bring other disciplines together to help create a doctoral program. There was that initiative. And I apologize for not knowing the other ones, but there were a couple others that kind of floated to the top. And so I think it became a group that was the different groups that were, excited about a particular initiative. So I just wanted to kind of fill in the context of the PDW for those who weren't there, and also test my remembering for those who were. Can feel free to correct me if I have erred.
Well,
Brandeis.
Brandeis, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere out east.
maybe a clarifying question, because I was at the PDW. That was the first time I got connected to this conversation. And that was really geared toward moving ahead with thinking about PhD education, which is kind of the focus through which we then came to, for instance, what about summer school, where PhD students from different universities that are interested in a certain different aspect can come and join, right? And somehow we decided to make that conversation bigger. And now here in this group, in this conversation, I hear people say, well, let's make sure that we do not get stuck in that bigger conversation about what is the field, etc. So now I'm a bit lost. It's also 5:30 here in the Netherlands, and I had a busy day. Where are we at? Also for the next, for the first question of the kind of breakout, are we focusing on clearly the kind of initiative like, okay, let's move ahead with the PhD, or do we take a step back and say, but what is then the context? What is where are we at with that conversation?
And Danielle, would you, in terms of your question, let me make sure I understand. Are you asking for an answer right now Is that what you're looking for?
Well, also because I see that you put the first question for the breakout in the chat, and it seems to be that larger context. So that's where kind of,
right,
before we get in that conversation, what is it that we intend?
Right. And I think the general consensus of some people was that we need to have a parallel conversation. We need to on one hand be talking about what is the future of the field. And second, we need to be looking at doctoral education, because that's what the initiative has been focusing on.
Okay.
So, but one informs the other, and in both directions. And so the question is understanding where is the field going now. What I would say, in my sense, I think we need to have both conversations going on at the same time, and continue to make progress in the short term. In my judgment, I find that in this work, we've got to be moving on concrete projects in the next year, that we have a sense of getting our hands dirty and making progress. We also, at the same time, need to step back and look, because I cannot find anywhere a statement about the future of the field. I cannot find anywhere where there's an agreement on what is the field trying to accomplish. I don't see one. I don't see a collective agreement on that. Now, I've been a part of a lot of conversations, Danielle, personally, the Baltimore ones. I've been through the 90s and 2000s and 2010s. I've been in different all of them ended up being, what is the definition of the field? That's different than what is the future of the field, right?
Yeah, or what is it that we want to accomplish?
Right. And what are the competent, like they turn into, what's the definition, and what do we need to know how to do, like competencies or something like that. But they've never gotten to, like, what do we want to, and then the big debate has been, should we professionalize or not? Should we have standards or not? Nope, we've not had a concrete conversation to come to agreement on those kind of critical things. Now, Hayshin, I might ask you to chime in a little bit, because he's new to our field from a different, and teaching in our doctoral program and teaching a class on the science of OD&C. And he, as a person who cares to build on the shoulders and build on the good work and bring something forward, has struggled a bit, and others have. And so there's something asking for that. So, Hayshin, do you want to chime in now, or are you comfortable with sharing some of your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I joined late to this conversation, and I was at the BDW, and we were talking about the vision of the OD&C doctoral education. And while we were talking about that, we were, obviously talking about contributing the future of the field of OD&C. And what I realized was that if we're not sure about the future of the field, how can we be clear in setting up a vision for doctorate education in the field of OD&C? So I struggled a little bit there because I wasn't sure about where the field as a whole is going, and how the doctoral education can contribute to achieving that field, the vision at the field level. So I thought, like Steve mentioned, it is important that we still talk about how we can kind of improve our doctoral education, but also be more clear and kind of build a consensus on where we're going as a field.
Thanks. And Lisa, you had your hand up. And you're on mute.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, agreeing about the thought about a consensus on the field, and in general in the scholar practitioner bridge or approach, because in that sense, I'm saying from both maybe from the student perspective as recent alumni, and in general, the idea of how do we build a pipeline of understanding from straight through undergrad to be a master's to a doctoral program of what an ideal or possible path could look like for an individual interested in the path of OD&C and the connections to opportunities that may be beyond, whether it's, project manager or, product management, and how does that connect to certifications in the field and that practitioner piece or side of it. And with conversations on not necessarily justifying the value of programs, but where does this fit in with the conversation of micro credentialing, or where is it even housed interdisciplinarily in terms of, is it in the school of, are we looking at organizational anthropologists, organizational psychologists, or in that sense, a business school, and how can it help build a bridge amongst those where the structure of where it can be housed is very different? And what does that look like in the field as well, in terms of individuals who are applying the degree and practice in different ways?
Good.
Before we go into groups, I just want to leave it open for any other context setting comments or information that you think would be helpful to the breakout groups.
I don't want to be ask a different question, but here it was one I wrote, which was, does the field of organizational development need doctoral education? Why or why not?
Yeah, and I want to hold that because I think that's the second question, because of
Okay.
the initiative, getting it, because we've already got from the PDW an answer. That is when I asked, so for example, I would say when I first put out the question a year ago, last summer, not this recent summer, but a year ago, and said, how many people would like to be in a conversation on doctoral education? I got like 120 people within about 2 weeks saying, I want to be in on that conversation.
Yeah.
And they were from all walks of life. I will tell you further that Bill Passmore said, I'm going to be talking with him next week. He said he does not want to get into a philosophical conversation about what is the field of OD&C. He wants to get his hands dirty and get on some stuff like the summer academy idea. But I've had other people say different. We got to, in my opinion, we got to create a space for both, like I said, both of those conversations to move forward together, and people that have energy for both, in a way to keep everybody informed and connected as we move forward in a kind of a more organic yet structured way. So I would hold that, because I believe that fits into like the second or third question really, and kind of talking about, but I think that question has been answered. I think it's more about the why, or what do we need to get out of it to make it worthwhile, right? It's not we do, now what do we need to get out of it? And I think that's part of the initiative and some of the outcomes. If you go back to the link, and if someone could paste the link in for me into the chat, because I got a couple screens up for the document. Somebody had taken and put an older version up, and they didn't put the most recent version. They clicked to revisions, because you can do that in Google Docs. I put the older version up that had actually some action items that came out of the PDW. So you'll see that on the action item page. Now it's the most recent version is up there right now. So could someone put the link in there for me? I'd appreciate that. So my thinking is, if we go into breakout groups right now, unless somebody has something else to say with regard to that question that you would like to inform the breakout conversations, and then we'll take about 10 minutes in a breakout group to discuss the question and come back and then try to see where we're at with that.
Okay.
I'm making the groups right now. So go ahead if anybody wants to add anything while I'm doing that.
Well, I like the idea that we need to have future in order to work on the doctoral programs. I kind of like that idea.
Okay. And any other context setting information that the groups could use, any information that would be helpful and informative to them. I mean, I look at Lisa, like with your recent experience, with working with students and looking at trying to how to infuse the future of the field through publishing and that kind of thing. And your work out at Pepperdine. So everybody's, I think, a lot of. But is there anything new, anything additional to add before I hit open all rooms? No? Okay. I'm going to open all rooms. The question is, here, I'm going to put it in the chat again, and I'll send it back out. And is 10 minutes enough? Do we need more time, or is 10 minutes enough for a conversation in small groups of three people?
Okay.
Is 10 minutes enough, you all? Do we
We'll
need
make it
15?
enough.
I was thinking 10 or 15. What's that?
I say we'll make it enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So go have this conversation about this question. Have one person be prepared to come back and summarize and put that summary in the chat. So we need a summary in the chat when you come back, as well as we'll report out. I'm going to open all rooms. Go have fun and discuss that question that is there. I'll post it again in the breakout rooms. So see you back in 10 minutes. Hi, all. I'm trying this out on Zoom. The question is, how can we address the larger question on the future of OD&C in order to inform a global doctoral initiative? Should we refocus the global doctoral initiative to focusing on first on the OD&C and then, or maybe both together, like I was suggesting? welcome back, everybody. And I want to stay focused with our time on the explicit question. If somebody could report, we can report outs, and if somebody could type a summary of their group discussion, and people can add to it, but I want to capture in the chat as much as possible. And the chat, the general conversation that you all had. So please put that into the chat. So the first question is, do we have a focused initiative around defining the future of the field, vision, future of the field, and then any other conversation around that? But I'd like to get a sense, do we need to do that and then have in parallel this doctoral initiative in parallel? So could you all summarize give me a concrete kind of consensus of your group if you had it? We had one in ours. So could you all, anybody jump in, and then we'll just kind of go around. We're small enough to do that.
Go ahead, Anton.
Sure. We had this conversation, and we believe, yes, we definitely should be talking about the future of the field, not because we want to make sure we don't get caught up in kind of this defining and redefining, but the world changes, the field is going to change with the world, different fields change, we consult and are interdisciplinary within those fields, and so it is necessary to pay attention to what's happening right now, what's happening in the future. So we do need to take a look at what the future of the field is, and how can we define what our standards are going to be for education without at least understanding where we are and where we're going. And we think that conversation needs to be happening simultaneously. The conversation about what is OD and where is it and where's it going, and where's PhD education going, or OD education in general. And not just that it needs to be happening simultaneously, but it also needs to be happening continuously. Right? Because,
okay, thanks, Anton.
Because of change.
Other summaries?
Maybe I'll make an attempt. So at least we were talking about parallel. And then I was one of the people that was basically then saying, yeah, but wait a minute, maybe we have to live with the fact that we at the moment don't know. And that things are emergent, and maybe the best way is to find out, actually to do practice, rather than to talk about it. But then we also came maybe to another question. We were saying, well, you can focus on what it is, what OD is, and in the future, but maybe the focus should be on what OD does. And from there, we came up to the question of how and where we should show up. And then it became possible to actually come with personal examples from teaching. And George, you can add, because you start to give examples from how we show up differently in teaching, in research, in consulting. And that might be a way to get a grasp on what it is that makes us different, the narratives, basically. And maybe then also how, not only how we show up differently now, but the question, how should we then show up? But that the way to enter that is through the personal stories, which could actually be an inquiry process for some younger people, for instance, to get the stories out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Danielle. Others want to add from their groups? I see the chat summary in there. If anybody want to add additional voice to this?
Yes, our group also talked about the value of the theoretical foundation, the critical thinking, and the ethical foundation or piece that underlines the principles in OD&C, what makes us distinctive, or maybe connects to, say, MBA or other types of programs that draws individuals to OD&C and also tangibly to fields like HR. And also, I like the idea of the parallel kind of external practitioner piece or connection to academies that connect to either nonprofits or other sectors and opportunities for students and graduates, and then that internal piece of how are we thinking about consultancies and maybe specializations within areas of OD&C. So for example, the area of focus for me would be education, technology, and for others, maybe it would be healthcare. And what does that look like for our future as well?
Okay. Anybody want to add anything else before I keep us moving? I want to keep you guys on your toes, keep you all on your toes. Right.
The only thing that I would like to add is one of the themes that went through our chat was we shouldn't forget the reliance on action research and the role of practice and bottom-up ways of moving
Absolutely.
forward.
Yeah.
And that part of the issue we have, I think, is we're dealing with parts of the system, but not the whole system. So the system dynamics recreate the problem. And if we commit to a more action sort of inquiry, focus on how do we show up? How would we like to show up? And look at this across the different constituents, such as students, practitioners, academics. I think we may build towards a understanding of OD&C that's future focused, but also one that captures our actions, our thoughts, and our motivation. So
thanks, George. And thank you for all your work that you did with Lisa on that special issue. I'm really grateful to that, for our students. I hadn't had a chance to say that to you verbally.
I look forward to continuing it.
Yeah, thank you. And what's cool, I like, so please vote. I have put a vote in there, 1, 2, or 3. So 1 is strategy for OD, 2 is strategy for doc ed, or 3 both. Which one would you vote for based on where we're at? Okay.
I want to invite Jennifer to share her perspective on this. She's actually in the doctoral program, and I think she has a helpful perspective on this. So Jennifer, would you mind sharing some of your reflections on this question?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. So what I shared in the group is why I chose the OD&C program, as when I was looking at a doctorate program, I had been looking at, a DBA, and then a peer of mine from my master's program, I ended up speaking with him, and he was in cohort 1 of the DODC program. And so once I was looking at the courses for each program and getting a little bit more information about them, what led me to OD&C is the human aspect to it, the people portion. And it makes sense because my undergrad was psychology, so I definitely gravitate towards just how people are, how people work. But when looking at those 2 different programs, the DBA is of course very heavily business focused, and whereas I wanted to kind of help with that people aspect. But in regards to this question, I definitely agree. I know Dr. Park had mentioned this before, having that vision of what the future looks like so that we're building the program to set the students up for success, to set them up for what's out there, or what they're going to be able to create. So that was kind of my perspective and where I was coming into this program. And I'm in my beginning of my 2nd year. And so one thing I have found before, I knew a little bit with change management, but didn't necessarily know how vast the OD&C field is. And so coming into this program, definitely getting that high level view of all those areas, and interested in going deeper into a lot of these areas, but it is so vast. So that can be a time constraint, and really, going deep into each area of the field. But yeah, so that's my perspective.
Thanks, Jennifer. And for all of you, Jennifer is a GA in our program, and we have specifically allocated her hours towards supporting this initiative and what we're doing. So I think, as you know, that takes a lot of work to manage all the communication and the website and the documents and coordination and stuff like that. And she's very skilled and gifted at it. And she's getting her project management certification in addition to her doctorate, and is looking forward to practicing those skills to help us stay on task. So thank you, Jennifer, for stepping into that role.
If I may, let me add just one thing. First, I posted in the chat my amen to Jennifer's comments about the people focus of OD. The second thing that came up in our discussion was something that I've heard in various professional association meetings along the way as well. And Ted mentioned this in his comment in the chat. Is OD the big umbrella that the other things are a subset of, or are the other things the umbrella and OD is a subset, a core competency that they have? And I think that the short answer to that is yes on both. And so we need to, try to remember that we're focusing education for people who want to be OD practitioners, big picture, but also we need to have, the understanding that other people are going to see OD as a competency of their coaching practice, or a competency of being an HR generalist, or a competency of being a project manager, a change manager. So it's something where we have to be yes and on that in order to focus our efforts effectively.
How I've reconciled it for me, because we get that question a lot with our students, and that is that the field of OD&C is probably, I think, one of the most uniquely positioned interdisciplinary professions and sciences that exists, really. And so I think of it similar to another area that's less interdisciplinary, and that's strategic planning. So there are people who have jobs that are specifically professional jobs doing strategic planning, vice presidents of strategy, and those kinds of things. They have the jobs. And on the flip side, we talk about the theory and research and science of strategic planning and how people need to be able to utilize that no matter where they are. And managers and everybody needs that. I think of our field that way. I think of us as more interdisciplinary. Now, when I juxtapose that with human resource management, it doesn't, I know, and Haishin has got his PhD in human resource management, and he could probably speak to it better than me. I think of it as being more professional oriented with theories that are brought in to support it. But I think it's, you got these professions that have theory, and then we got to allow both to exist, is what I think you're saying, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
And Haishin, does that coincide with your thoughts of how I?
Well, I mean, it's a different kind of issue, but usually PhD in HR only cares about research. So it's a problem in the HR field. They also feel the gap between practice and research, but PhD programs fully focus on research, and they kind of, I mean, in my view, need to kind of open up to kind of, bring in some practitioners' perspective. But what I see currently is that PhD in HR is not very different from PhD in OD. They like 99% research focused.
Right. So we can learn from the best practices of that, learn from the not so best practices, right? And we can figure that out as we think about some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think we're at Anne, I'm sorry.
Steve.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Yeah.
What's going through my head is when we talk about this, I would be helped if we could distinguish between a master's in organizational development and a doctorate in organizational development.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when I hear the conversations, and maybe I'm just hearing it through a different lens, I'm hearing great master's program. I mean,
right.
We're teaching them to go out in the field and practice OD. How is that different
from a doctorate?
Doctorate. Right. So it's like, okay, how are we different than HR? How are we different than project management? Or the same, how are we different than a master's in OD versus a doctorate in OD? So I think maybe by distinguishing things, we can actually come to a focus. Oh, we're not that. Oh, we are. So
right on. And I think that's part of the defining work, defining the future of the field, is adding some initiatives to do that. So this is great. Anything else before I shift us to our, I think the final conversation we can have today, which I think is going to be equally as helpful and productive. All right. So if you go to the strategy document, if you look at that, you have the ability to make all the comments you want in the world on any of those items there. So that's number one. Second, if you go to page 5, there were 4 things that came out of the PDW, and those that were there can help clarify this, but we had a post-meeting discussion and came up with those 4 things. And some of them are more field-oriented types of action items, and some of those are more doctoral education action items. But essentially, one item was the strategy for the future of the field. So we've talked about that. So now if you pull that and bring that up and make that, and then you say there's 2, 3, and 4. One is 2A, and it could be just called 2. I could take 2A and make it 2, and I kind of think that might work better like that. And I can always change things. So mind you, it's Google Docs. I can always go back. I'm just trying to keep us going. So if I were to take that, and we know that this is going to be something parallel, and then if we look at some, or maybe that stays where it's at, but we have 5 things there, if you will. If you look on that, do you want me to show my screen, or is everybody okay being there? I can share my screen if anybody wants. I can't hear you.
I've got the doc open. I can see it fine.
Tell me to share.
It'd be useful to me if you could share it.
I'll do that. No problem.
Okay.
No problem. Okay, there we go. All right. So, George, what we got is there's a link. I can put it in there. If you have the link, you can always go back later. But this is a document that will, as I'm using as sort of as a concrete place, and it's a very rough draft. This is some stuff about a strategy statement, kind of vision, mission, goals, and principles for doctoral education. But when you read it, it really reads like it lends itself to looking at what's the strategy for the future of the field. And if some of this can be pulled out for a specific initiative around doctoral education, for example, and I think that is what could have emerged. And when you go to page 5, there's 5 concrete actions that came out of the PDW. So my thought is, with our time that we have, maybe a few questions and then a quick breakout to say, what would you add to this? What would you delete from this? Or how would you prioritize this? And I will keep us kind of brief in the breakouts and come back and talk about it. But what, does anybody want to speak that was at the PDW? Would someone be willing to speak to these 4 items?
I can say a few words about the summer academy piece, not all the others, but I think there was a couple different drivers from which that was developed. And I thought one of them was, if we have a number of doctoral programs around the world, and some put more focus on one thing and some put more focus on another thing, part of what the academy could do around the academy of management is create pieces that fill the gaps better, so that people could come from whatever program they're doing and add into their education, so that
we just lost your audio, Dave.
Huh? What?
Eric, can you hear us? Because I heard him the whole time. I heard him the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, I heard you the whole time, David.
Okay.
Eric, maybe I think Eric's connection may have broke.
Might have been. Okay, yeah.
Well, and so one idea was to do gap filling and to think about creating different things that we learn from the students and from the directors that help us to see where the pieces need to be put together. Now, over time, it could be that a lot of those pieces become part of the doctoral programs. But that was one of the drivers from one table, at least, that talked a little bit about the idea for the summer academy. Like, some people might need more research pieces, and some people might need a little more understanding on the practice or applied side, and that would be a balancing act, basically. So that was one thought.
The other thought of the summer academy was to have deep experiential learning.
Oh yes, basically experiential. done
Yeah,
a different way, done a different way, yeah.
So that people can actually feel and experience what OD is.
Mm-hmm. That was good. Yeah, it's good, George.
Agreed. Yeah, the idea of, I think, project-based learning be helpful in the sense of, so for example, if there was a particular field of area of interest for an individual and bridging that gap, so say they came from a social science background or, you know, psychology or sociology background, or even an MBA previously. And again, how does that define or distinguish, or even maybe have commonalities with, you know, there's a DBA programs, or what difference in value add can that be within action research or project-based learning and research-based projects as well. So if they go into an organization, not only to do a case study, but to work on a particular concern, and then how would that concern be resolved based on that lens that they are approaching it from, and then bringing that back to the classroom in terms of, again, that scholar practitioner focus.
I'm going to open all the rooms up. Going to go into room of 4. I'd like you to do, this is quick work here, 5 minutes, 7 minutes around there. What would you add, modify, or delete from the list? Second, do we do this inside, outside, with the academy? How do we engage the academy? What role does the academy need to play in this? 2 questions. What would you add, modify, or delete to this list? And second, what role does this play within the context of the academy that you would recommend? There's been some conversation around that coming up. We'll open all rooms, 7 minutes. I know it's not time. Just be focused, get on task, and come back with just some initial quick thinking or initial thinking on this. There you go, Lisa. Sorry, Lisa, you got cut off right in the middle. I'll make sure we address that. That's one piece to address. David, you okay? Dave, you just look like something happened.
No, we just moved fast from the breakout back to the room. And I
You
got
had that look. You had
got
that look
dizzy.
on your face, like, oh.
I got dizzy.
Well,
I got dizzy for a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
We moved quickly.
And David Bright was frozen for a second, but he was actually faking being frozen. So, so in wrapping up, I'm going to put would somebody like to summarize what they talked about in their group? Maybe Lisa, could you summarize our group for us and maybe your closing point?
You're muted, Lisa. I'm sorry.
We spent most of our conversation talking about the context of the Academy of Management and whether or not that would be a good holding container for this initiative. And I think some of us felt more strongly than others, but I think I can say that we were in a consensus that it probably was not the best holding container for this initiative, and that some other entity, maybe its own entity, might need to exist in order to advance this. And then the other comment that I had, Steve, was that in the four points that came out of for moving forward, I would take the word strategy out of that. I don't think that we're coming up with a strategy, that this is not about strategizing, and who even knows what that means. So I would just say we're refocusing the initiative on the vision for a future of the OD&C.
Okay, so other comments. I'm putting a vote in here for you all in terms of that, where the location, how you would recommend it being led from. Could people put a summary of your conversation in the chat? We can't lose it, so please put a summary in the chat. We got 5 minutes to wrap up, and I think we're in a pretty good place. We'll have another meeting, and I'm going to ask you for your favorite date and time for regrouping. So if you want to look at your calendar and make some suggestions, I will do something fast to create something, but just give some general guidance if you could at the end. Be prepared for that after the vote here. Don't put that in. So closing comments, next steps. It's open.
One of the themes that went through, and other folks in our group can share, I'd like to move from language that we want to define to enact.
Okay.
That it's focused on practice, it's focused on experience, it's evolutionary, it's more action research, it's continual cycles, it's high engagement, it's linked to the values of the field that differentiate us. And I think, and that's what attracts me to the Academy this summer.
Great. And George, I don't want to lose that. I got the recording, but can you put that in the chat? I'm going to copy the chat and put it at the end of the document here, so that we have our notes. Okay.
Sure.
So there's things you want to make sure don't get missed, like, the focus on action research, which I absolutely have had so much fun. I went to Tavistock this summer with our doctoral students, and they engaged us in the room. And they said, over the next 3 days together with y'all, what's your action research question and hypothesis that you want to bring into this experience as a community? And had that conversation. And it was so amazing to see how they used that language, which seems to me sometimes a little foreign at times. I love action research, but just the way they brought it up. But I got it. I really appreciated that action research, the inquiry notion. So I appreciate that, George, in terms of you bringing that. So make those points in the chat that you want to make sure we don't lose. Make points in the document that you want to make sure we don't lose. And I'd like you to also put in there, put your recommendation on when we should meet again. Say, I'd like to meet this week or something along this time, this day at these times, or something like that. Anything that will give me guidance. I'm gonna have to pick something and hope it works. I won't do a doodle because doodle will be outdated by the time you all answer it. so I'm going to have to take my best guess from what you all give me, create something, and invite you all to it. And hopefully it's far enough out that you'll be able to make adjustments if it's not perfect. So I see us saying too, we need to do some type of entity, some type of initiative that is independent of the academy, but linked in a collegial, collaborative, strategic way, because I firmly believe that OD&C at the academy is an important pillar for the work. At the same time, it needs to be outside and not run by that. And I think that's, and Lisa has said it very well, and I appreciate that voice being brought in. Closing words. Any words of encouragement? Was today worth your time? What do you want to make sure happens? Will you come back again? What do you need to make sure you come back again? I want us to build momentum, not diminish. And we only got a couple minutes, and then we'll say bye. Any parting words?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep is the closing.
Yeah. We got to get something started, though. We got to get the two parallels is going to make a big difference, I think. And if they work simultaneously, that will help. And we have to get that moving because it's not set that way so far. So
yeah, I think it's time to roll up our sleeves and get some specific work done.
Yeah, right on. I'm right there with you. I'm committed to that.
Me too.
And I looked at my buddy, hey Sheen, is this helping?
Yeah, this is helpful. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I will pick a date, put some date and times in there. Like, should we meet 2 weeks, a month? Give me a little direction before you go. Please don't leave without putting it in there. Just give me a little bit. Hey, let's meet in 3 weeks. Let's meet in a month. Let's meet in 2 weeks. Let's meet next month. Give me any direction in terms of time of day or day of the week or anything like that you want.
Okay.
But I'm like, how far out is really important to me. How far out do we need to come back together? And then if there's any direction in terms of timing and stuff like that, mindful of Tanya in Europe, I want to do it earlier so that she can have dinner at a reasonable hour. You're very easy, in terms of being flexible. I appreciate it, Tanya. I'm also mindful of that as well. So I'm grateful that you're here. All right.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. The recording will be available as well. We'll send out some stuff. Jennifer and I are going to meet now and get on the project management stuff, the fun stuff. So
thanks. Bye, everybody.
See you all later. Bye.